Good evening, my friends. How are you on this Friday evening, July 10th? It's so good to see you here. I'm sorry I didn't make it last night. I ended up with a really harsh migraine that just kind of hit me, hives and then a migraine. And I had to go lie down in my bedroom with no lights, no sound, nothing, like a vampire. And I did not get back up till 12:45 this afternoon. Wow. So anyway, I missed you all. So it's so nice to see you here. You know what I was thinking about today? I was thinking about Milton Avery and his just amazing work, and thinking about him in terms of this notion of like what brought us to abstraction. He's not considered an abstract artist, but what brought us, some of the precursors to that. And so I found a really nice Incollect, this website, Incollect. I found a really nice article about it, and I thought that we could take a look at that and take a look at some of Avery's work. So let's begin, yeah? Who do we have here today? Deborah Blockroll, so good to see you. Charles, so good to see you. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. So let's look at this really wonderful work. And this is I'm reading the work by Carl Emil Willers, who wrote this article. And he quotes Milton Avery as saying, in 1993, this quote, "In order to paint, one has to go by the way one does not know. Art is like turning corners. One never knows what is around the corner until one has made the turn." I love that quote. Life's a little like that, right? We can only know so much, and then you kind of have to go with it. You have to turn that corner. Yeah, so good. So he says, what is it that makes Milton Avery, who was born in 1885 and died in 1965, art appear so much more modern when compared to canvases of his contemporaries, whether they be figurative or abstract artists? With modernism, the search for immediacy, for quickness, for vitality, the pursuit of effects intrinsic to the sketch became the ends rather than the means of artistic achievement. No longer relegated to the stage within the production of a finished work of art, characteristics of drawings and studies became increasingly appreciated for their ability to convey a world of change, speed, and novelty synonymous with all that was modern in people's lives and daily experiences. Hi, Kip, how are you? Avery's practice takes this modernist transformation in taste to a level that is neither as prevalent in any predecessor nor as refined in any predecessor. It is for this reason that Avery and his art are described as being at the end of modernism. Ironically, it is Avery's rather conventional working process, his conservative method for preparing for works on a canvas by making a series of drawings and studies on paper that allows this description. Avery's genius can be seen in the way that he looked discerningly at the effects he was able to achieve in his rapid jottings and spontaneous scribbles. He meticulously works out ways to translate the notations and outlines captured in his works on paper into his oils on canvas. Yeah, I love the shape of these trees as well, Charles. And it's interesting because there's another tree series in here that I really am particularly drawn to. And so, the thing about Avery too is that he's basically is choosing kind of just mundane life events, like we just saw this, Skechers on the rock, right? Nice little event. Here, the Sunday Riders. Oil on canvas. Look at that sky. Look at that sky. I just love that. It is difficult to classify Avery's art in the usual genres. While his work duly falls under the categories of landscapes, seascapes, figures, portraits, self-portraits, and still lifes. Avery's oeuvre includes a number of categorical conversations, such as the figure in the landscape, that can also be identified as a portrait. That rendered the categories themselves meaningless. What is important in Avery's subject is that they are derived from his personal observation of the natural world and his experience of the simple realities of domestic life among his family and friends. And that's what makes it so important as well. Simple domestic life gives us this understanding of the time frame in which he lived. Look at this one. Country Brook. Adorable. I don't know why. It's adorable because of the little girl, right? Just so sweet. Who else do we have? Jamie Belay. Hello. Jamie, you'll appreciate Milton Avery, right? Those trees look like old souls. I love that. Yeah. Hey, Arlene. How are you? I'm so sorry, everybody. If you saw me yesterday, you wouldn't have wanted to see me. I broke out in hives and ended up with a massive migraine that kept me in bed till 12:45 this afternoon. So I'm better. Thank you. So I'm back and looking at Milton Avery. So I apologize for not. I couldn't even, I don't know that there's a place on YouTube that I could say I'm not going to be on today. So I usually post it on Facebook, but then that would have required opening Facebook. And that would have been required light in my face and also the toxicity that is Facebook these days. So yeah. Milton Avery, the son of Eugene and Esther March Avery, was born in Altmore, New York, a small town near Oswego, on March 7, 1885. When Avery was 8 years old, his family moved to Hartford, Connecticut, his home for the next 24 years. Upon graduating from high school, he took a low-paying job at a local typewriter factory. Remember typewriters? But in hopes of finding more lucrative employment as a commercial artist, he applied for a course in lettering at the Connecticut League of Art Students in Hartford. Unable to gain admittance to the overcrowded lettering class, he opted for a drawing course at the League taught by Charles Noel Flagg and Albertus Jones. How happy are we that that class was overcrowded? The single semester of drawing in charcoal was Avery's only formal art training in a painting career that would span more than 50 years. You know, I believe that D.C. Moore has his estate, and always when I bring a client, well, when D.C. Moore was on, when they were still on 57th Street on Fifth Avenue, my favorite was bringing clients to D.C. Moore Gallery, and then the best Milton Avery was hanging in the bathroom. Just a small, wonderful one. So beautiful. This is one of my favorites. So I'm going to continue to read, and I want to hear what you have to say. I would love to own a Milton Avery. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so what did he do? Art Students League, right? The single semester. In 1924, he met Sally Michael, an illustrator for the New York Times. He moved to New York in 1925 and married Sally, who financially supported the family for the next 25 years. Great work, Sally. In the fall of 1949, Avery had a heart attack. Sally was told that her husband would live for only a year at best. Although he would create some of his best work over the next decade, and he would live for more than 15 years, Sally recalled that Avery never regained his earlier health after the heart attack. Avery's health began to deteriorate rapidly in the early 60s after an extended period of hospitalization. Don't you love this, Arlene? Yeah, that blue. Avery died on January 3rd, 1965 at Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx. A memorial service was held at Ethical Culture. Avery's career shows a process of consistent development and refinement, intimately connected to his creative method and reflective of his personal life. However, Avery's earliest work of the 20s and 30s, this is 1938, the one that you're looking at is 1945, so it's a little later. Let me go back to one of his earlier works for you. Let's go to this one, this sweet little piece. Possess few similarities to his mature work of the 40s and 50s. Avery almost exclusively with subject derived from personal experience. The observations that provided Avery with his subjects influenced his use of color and form, as well as the development of his individual style. The choice of subject rather than adherence to artistic movements and aesthetic ideologies had a paramount influence on Avery's formal means. The large flat areas that Avery renders reveal a modernist concern for asserting the flatness of the painting's canvas support. The reduction of all areas of the canvas to simple color shapes, I should say, regardless of whether they refer to figures, objects, or settings, results in the assignment of equal aesthetic value and similar visual weight to all areas of the painting's surface. Throughout his life, Avery was a painter concerned with meticulously refining his palette and carefully balancing his compositions. Let me go back to this one. This is a later one. I love this piece. Oh, oil paints take forever to dry, Charles. Forever. I just watched a fantastic Nova about Leonardo da Vinci and finally began Walter Isaacson's Leonardo da Vinci biography. And he talks a lot about the layering of oil paints in the Renaissance and how long they do take to dry. It's really fascinating. With the elimination of unnecessary illusionistic detail and simplification of forms into a few flat shapes, color naturally becomes a dominant element in Avery's art. That's what you're responding to here, Arlene, right? As well as I am. Avery has always been recognized as a colorist of the highest quality and most inventive means. Now, look what happens here. Love this next one. Arlene says, there was a wonderful Avery that hung in my son's school headmaster's room. That was held in, oh, Avery, what, Arlene, what school do you want to share? Obviously private school, right? I shouldn't say obviously private school. Some public schools, believe it or not, have amazing pieces of work because of the WPA. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so let's look at this. Avery's color is original, expressive, and largely intuitively rendered. That is to say that it was never based on mechanical color theories or dogmatic aesthetic prescriptions. Avery is able to utilize color itself as a means of suggesting and emphasizing mass, weight, and three-dimensional form in his paintings. The light, close-valued quality of Avery's color emphasizes the interrelationships between the physical objects represented in the painting and the light or space which surrounds them. I love her. Who does she remind me of? She reminds me a little bit of one of Van Gogh's girls, young women, that he painted as well. Yeah, look at that flatness, right? And all of the shapes and the color and the interrelationship between them. Yeah. Do these paintings make you feel calm than the paintings you showed a few days ago about the Cubists? Yes, Charles, that's a great question. I have such a different relationship with this work than I do the Cubist work, and a lot of it is the color. Well, I'm beginning to understand it's the color as I'm reading this as well. Yeah, it's the color, it's the piece of his life as he's just telling us what his life is about, his life with his wife. Oh, I have a lovely piece. Let me go. That was a great question, by the way. There's a piece that I took. Like, look at this one, the cello player. Just a moment from his own life. I thought I had one of his wife as well. Let me just look at it. And I love paintings like that. You know, I as somebody who looks at history, right, through paintings, it tells us a little bit about the way life was lived at the time. Whereas the Cubist, to me, is more of a mathematical, geometric sensibility. So, yeah, love this one. Look at the blues in this. Avery's jovial wit and sense of humor, mentioned in almost every description of his personality and apparent in many of his recorded statements, is almost clearly evident within his art. Avery's art exhibits a whimsical, witty quality once achieved almost entirely through form rather than content. Avery possessed a wide variety of squiggly lines, calligraphic brushstrokes, and scratched or scraped designs, creating an extremely witty dialogue through minimal design. I don't, oh yeah, Birchwathan. I just looked down and I saw that, Arlene. Yeah, sounds about right, which is great. I love the way this writer says, I never thought of it this way, friends. He had a vocabulary of squiggly lines. And then when I look at it, it's like, my goodness, he absolutely does. It's just so great. Avery's simplification of a composition into a few basic color shapes. Let's look at this one. And his repertory of humorous formal devices often led critics to comment on the innocent, childlike nature of his work. Avery himself apparently had a strong admiration for the directness of expression and elimination of detail characteristic of children's art. However, there is no evidence that he ever seriously studied works of art production by children. Upon seeing an exhibition at the New School of Art done by children of the Greenwich Village, by children of Greenwich House art class, Avery remarked, "We would all go more often to the galleries if such work could be seen." These children express a spontaneity and joyousness in their painting, which all works of art should have for us. These paintings are an explosion of color arrangement, and it is that color which particularly appeals to me rather than any literary content, which is and should be secondary. That's from one of his wife collected that quote and put it in her scrapbooks. I have to tell you, if I were part of the Greenwich House art students, that's kids that put that, Avery said that about, I would have put that on my resume. What a phenomenal thing to say, right? I love that. I love that. And so really we get a sense of who Avery, from his art, we really get a sense of who he was in the world that he was living in. Yeah. Yeah, I remember when Epstein bought that mansion. Oh, I don't even want to say his name. Yeah, I knew him. So here's my claim to fame, my friends. He was intimidated by me. That's what I should put on my resume. Jeffrey Epstein was intimidated by me. That was my claim. That's one of them. I like that. Okay, I'm going to move on. Yay! Here's another one. You know when a headache clears and you feel good? Then the first thing I'm looking at is Avery. It's like amazing. Avery frequently gives his figures an exaggerated, almost awkward perspective. This exaggerated perspective, produced through a proficiency in drawing, never through mathematical or theoretical calculations, endows his figures with a sense of solidly occupying a pictorial space that often recedes dramatically into depth. Avery's ability to suggest spatial depth and sculptural volume through precise linear drawing contributes to his ability to capture the unique identity of his subjects. This is particularly evident in Avery's figure composition, where characteristic poses, features, and proportions are revealed almost completely through outline and silhouette. I love this article. It's a little bit more art-speaky than I like to talk because I prefer dialogue, but I really love the way he wrote this article. I think it's really good. Despite Avery's rejection of conventional modeling in chiaroscuro, light and shade, his figures retain an unmistakable sculptural quality. They possess a definite weight, mass, volume, monumentality, and ability to occupy the space they are placed. However, it is Avery's precision of outline and silhouette that defines the volume, proportions, and poses of his figures. Thus, those factual accidents of the silhouette are obviously not accidents at all. On the contrary, they are precisely what is all important to this kind of painting. I want to hear what you guys are saying. I'm sure he did, Arlene. I'm sure he did. Yeah. Thank you, Arlene. It finally occurred to me after all these years the other day what might really, what it was. He got very nervous when I was around. Very, very nervous. I was formidable. I was 20, but I was formidable. Yeah. Hope I don't make anybody nervous now. Yeah. No, I do. No, I don't. I'm going to switch to this one. Look what happens here, you guys. Look at this. This is monumental. On landscape and light, Avery recognized the early role, careful observation of nature in the countryside surrounding Hartford, Connecticut, and it played in the production and development of his art. During the early years of his career, Avery painted in oils on canvas immediately from nature, only later beginning to paint from sketches. Much of Avery's ability to retain the singular identity of time and place clearly emerges from his concern for depicting the specific quality of light that illuminates his painted scenes. Avery produces light-filled landscapes and seascapes through a direct use of close-valued color, seldom rendering the shadows produced by objects to convey the existence of a color source. The expression of particular conditions of light emerged as a primary focus in his extremely, I think they're exemplary, simplified compositions of the late 1950s. With a few brushstrokes, Sun over Southern Lake of 1951, that's the one we're looking at. No, it's not. It's another one, captures a visual impression. He says, I always take, I don't know why that piece isn't here and I'm reading about it. Let's see. But that's okay. We'll apply it to this. I always take something out of my pictures, strip the design to essentials. The facts do not interest me so much as the essence of nature. I never have any rules to follow. I follow myself. I began painting by myself in the Connecticut countryside, always directly from nature. I have long been interested in trying to express on canvas a painting with a few large, simplified spaces. I love that. He said that in 1977. Yeah. Love this work. I want to see what you guys think about this piece. Oh, yeah. I'm not seeing what you think about this piece. Who else do we have here? I love this piece. The colors in this are just magnificent. So I have one more to show you from this series. I want to read one more thing for you. And I'm hoping that everybody has something fabulous that they're going to do this weekend, although I know it's really tricky. Because even though we're out and about more in New York City, it's like, well, it's raining, so it's really quite difficult today. But there's really no place to go. You could sit outside for lunch or dinner, which is lovely. But there's really no place to go yet. There's no theater, there's no museums and such. So we're still in this phase. I just hope everybody in the rest of the country will pull it together like we did in New York. Avery began to work from previous executed works on paper only after many years of painting directly from nature. When he first changed his working method, he began with sketches and drawings, then moving to larger works on paper in a variety of media, and finally progressing to oils on canvas. This experience undoubtedly contributed greatly to his artistic development, particularly to his penchant for capturing the specific identity of his subjects. As other painters had done for centuries, Avery, only later in his development, made sketches and drawings directly from his subjects to capture and later call back to memory an initial visual experience. However, the multiplicity of miscellaneous detail is never reimposed upon the image when it is translated from a small sketch to a larger work. In fact, perhaps, just the opposite. In the execution of the interim works on paper, Avery further simplified his compositions, eliminating illusionistic detail and refining his color. In an interview in 1943, he said, working largely from sketches, getting an initial stimulus or reaction from nature before he starts a canvas. This is from a reporter who paraphrased him, my apologies. Before he starts a canvas, the idea has been pretty well crystallized, so the actual painting is rapid and retains a feeling of spontaneity, a quality achieved through long, consistent practice, guided by fine sensitivity to color and boldness. Yeah, nice. So let's talk about, while Avery's art can never be described as completely non-objective or purely abstract, it progresses towards an abstract quality through the process of radical simplification. See, this is what I'm very fascinated with. this notion of him as this artist that is really dealing in abstraction. What is it that we are seeing that creates that notion of abstraction about him? And it's that that simplification. I wanted to see if I could pull up another one of his for you. One second. Maybe I can't because once again, yeah, I'm gonna try. Just give me a sec. Everybody, talk among yourselves. I'm joking. Yeah, I have it. And here's my husband in the other room in his den in his office going, she couldn't have done it beforehand, could she? She just couldn't have done it. I was busy all day. Not all day. I was, well, yeah, you know what I mean. I love this because it's one of his wife. So I wanted to really show that to you, which I think is really speaks a lot to this notion. So let me go there. There we go. Okay. You still with me? Yeah. My favorite was the trees with the light. Arlene, that was mine. That was mine too. It brought me to that today. When I saw that picture, it brought me to him today. And it was just like it cleared up my headache. It cleared my head. It cleared space for me. It was so magnificent. I agree with you 100%. So let's talk about this because I have a really good quote from Rothko about him. And he said, the conviction of greatness, the feeling that one was in the presence of great events, was immediate on encountering his work. It was true for many of us who were younger, questioning and looking from an anchor. This conviction has never faltered. It has persisted and has been reinforced through the passing of decades and passing of fashions. Yeah. I love this notion that although there can be, let me go back, the abstract quality through a process of radical simplification and severe reduction of a visual array, although they can hardly be said to be illusionistic, his paintings are always to some degree representational. Avery's canvases remain rooted in physical observation, and the best of them succeed in capturing that element of abstraction that always exists in reality. It is Avery's recourse to his drawings and sketches that maintain the crucial balance between abstraction and representation, between non-objectivity and realism. It's so fascinating because I wouldn't have thought of it that way, I think. So, yeah. That's a good question about Asian influence. You can see it, right, Charles? I don't know, but that's a really good question. But I think in order to start this weekend properly, I need this painting. This has to be the last painting I see today. Don't know about you guys. The figure surrounded by black is stunning, as well as her posture just works so well. I couldn't agree more with you. And that's his wife, right? That's his wife. And his life was consumed by, let me see if I have the quote. There's another really good quote from, there's a really good quote. The fall, Avery met Rothko and they became friends, and he introduced Rothko to Gottlieb and to Barnett Newman. But there's a really good quote about, here it is. I got it, you guys. I got it. Mark Rothko. Do I have that painting up for you? Here it is. Because I think it's apropos to this painting. Mark Rothko asks, what was Avery's repertoire? His living room, Central Park, his wife Sally, their daughter March, the beaches and mountains where they summered, cows, fish heads, the flight of birds, his friends, and whatever world strayed through his studio, a domestic, unheroic cast. But from these there have been fashioned great canvases that, far from the casual transitory implications of the subjects, have always a gripping lyricism and often achieve the permanence and monumentality of Egypt. Wow. I love that. Boy, Mark Rothko can write as well. So my friends, thank you so much for joining me this evening. My husband's cooking this evening this amazing sausage and cabbage. It's layered like a lasagna, but it's just sausage and cabbage. It's just really phenomenal. So I'm very excited about dinner. I will see you all on Monday. Thank you so much for joining me. I love Milton Avery. Wish I owned one. Maybe someday. Yeah. Have a great